Here we go. My name is Christo de Klerk, and I'm the lead developer for the Creative Europe co-funded project, Europe Grand Central. I'm here today to present this paper on behalf of my colleagues Marcus and Erin, Cory. I'll be covering three things today. One is share our experience building a practitioner-oriented reporting and project archival tool. Two, reflect on why practitioner-driven evaluation is important to knowledge production, but question its current place in the network of cultural actors. Third, I'll give a pitch for you to join Global Grand Central. If there's anything I want you to take from today's talk, it is we should let practitioners drive the evaluation process and endeavor to make archival practice, which is reporting, evaluation, and documentation, a living part of the creative process. So the knowledge sharing platform Global Grand Central stems from a project called Europe Grand Central that was initiated in 2013, just as the Syrian refugee crisis for the first time started to make front page headlines in Europe. Marcus and I saw this context as an opportunity to build an audience for a storytelling methodology we had developed that connects people by the borders they cross. We applied iterations of this method with some success to bridge borders in exhibitions and artistic interventions in the United States, Sweden, Jordan, and Russia. Together with 7 fabulous organizations that include several independent art centers, Trans-Europalis, and the Chimeta Fund, a mobility operator, we assembled to use the storytelling method to transform perceptions of border crossings from suspicion into curiosity in our local context. In April 2015, EGC was approved for funding by the European Union as a 2-year small-scale cooperation project. While our designs were on one methodology, we quickly became interested in each other's unique methodologies. At La Dome Theatre in Bologna, the theatrical team had developed a method of neighborhood activation by making audiences a central part of the storytelling process. In the town of Umeå, still learning how to pronounce that name, in Sweden, a fruit tasting method was used to compare impressions of taste across cultures. Despite the potential of these methods, our partners were frustrated about the lack of a mutual learning infrastructure. With this issue, and we're just all pretty far apart, even in Europe. With this issue, our focus shifted from an emphasis on a singular common method of inquiry to a common form for relating our unique methodologies. By 2017, the website had 3 sections: an activity sharing section, where users describe projects from inception to conclusion and reflection, including a rather arbitrary was it successful or failure slider, with comments on why they thought it was successful or a failure so that others could learn from that. There was a hubs section where essentially the profile section where individuals, location-based organizations, and networks create profiles that maintain a list of their activities and connections to each other based on shared activities either within this project or beyond. And then there was a story section where participants or practitioners related their experience of borders experience related to their project. When users beyond Europe started joining the platform, creating profiles and adding their activities, we began to see something we weren't expecting. Residency artists from North Africa and the Middle East were using the website not only to fulfill the terms of their residency, but they were using it to promote themselves and their work. Also, non-partner organizations started joining, including program coordinators from a library in the United States, all sharing their activities in progress related to arts and culture. It is here that I think we flip from being a project for social change and become a part of supporting sustainability in cultural entrepreneurship. The term inverse infrastructure is used by some scholars to describe a system created by and for its users. Global Grand Central as a knowledge sharing platform or activity sharing, still need to get the right phrase there, platform can be described as an inverse infrastructure in that our users steer changes in the design of the forms, literally forms, used to share their work and reflect on process and outcomes. Okay, but now our 2-year funding is over. We are left with filing reports to our funders. All this self-reporting that we had on the site is a nice draft for the final reports. The project ends, and we pull the plug on the website. Our project journey is perhaps similar to other projects funded by the EU. It follows a certain logic and sequencing of actions that can roughly be simplified with this learning circle. In an ideal world, these 4 phases are all connected and layered on top of each other so that our efforts are informed by the experiences and challenges faced by previous projects, generating a virtuous loop of cumulative progress. If the impact cycle represents the design of reporting, mobilization is the efficient turn where the cycle completes and feeds back into further and future work. Little engine. We argue that the classic actors in cultural knowledge production are policymakers, practitioners, and researchers, but that policymakers and researchers tend to command evaluation. One, because they hold the purse strings, and the latter because that's what they do. All 3 actors share a common enthusiasm for the future of evaluation. And in the paper, we detail examples from Voices of Culture, European Commission, and ENCATC, but we believe the sector can take a lesson from education-based research, which gives practitioners the lead in evaluation, as this quote puts up from Evidence for the Frontline and an education paper. It says, yes, policymakers have a responsibility to ensure there is a coherent overall system, and indeed researchers have a duty to produce high-quality research. Yet it is frontline professionals who are best placed to act as the guardians of improvements and standards and should be the heart of evidence-informed practice. Now, when we talk about teachers, we think, oh yeah, that's obvious. But maybe that's a little less obvious in cultural management. Policymakers, practitioners, and researchers will inevitably use different lenses to look at their work and lessons. But we also use forms to look at things. And this may be the more apt metaphor for us to consider to get us on the same page. There are several barriers to the mobilization. There are several barriers to the mobilization of this cycle of knowledge production that we identify in our paper, and which we speculate could be technically resolved. These barriers include database hugging, reporting fatigue. I'm taking these images from a different type of content aggregator, in this case, stock photography database. Positive bias in reporting and siloed networks. And we cover these in the paper, but for brevity, I'll limit comment here to the one with the least interesting stock photograph illustration. A promise of the internet was the mobilization of knowledge through the connection of networks, publishing something online, and it's available anywhere in the world, forever, right? And it can be replicated, copied, and pasted ad nauseum in sort of a support of new activities anywhere and everywhere. That's the promise of the web. But today, very few projects of any scale are accepted for funding without an online component. When funding ends, so do updates. And with them, all the knowledge our websites were once supposed to store and share. In our paper, we look at 33 projects identified by the EU as Creative Europe success stories, which means they demonstrate exceptional results in terms of policy, relevance, communication, potential, impact, or design. This is a website for one of them. Just 5% of all projects funded between 2007 and 2013 gained this title. So it's a prestigious little group. And by the way, this is the same program that funded EGC. So we took a look at the 33 projects, and we have a graph that's probably too small to read here. but you can see it in the paper, where we kind of break this down to try to see which projects have life after funding based on their website activity. So 8 of the 33 have a high quality web presence that are not only include representation of results, but also some sort of critical self-assessment. They actually say something about what the outcome was, and maybe even say something about what they did wrong or what could have been done better. While 13 projects have websites that were updated at least a year beyond the funding date, it doesn't last. Only 7 of the 33 projects were updated in the past year. The EU hosts a description of each project on their website, but 2/3 of the project profiles contain only basic information, often limited to the descriptions of the projects from their funding applications. So not even updated during the process. So, I mean, is it just a technical solution, maybe? Find a way to make the evaluation process part of the online documentation process, connecting the dots between access and learning? This kind of solution takes a coordinated effort from an entity that's focused on advocating evaluation and archival practice in networks for culture. We formed Global Grand Central as a nonprofit this summer for this purpose, and with a plan to develop globalgrandcentral.net as an open platform and living archives for learning and exchange among artistic, social, and cultural activists worldwide. Our focus now is developing an inclusive governance structure and securing long-term financing. I welcome you to join us and join the platform. Thank you.